Hi, y'all, and welcome to Monday night's All Metal Mode podcast with Gypsy, myself, Amanda Digger DeGauze, and our special guest tonight, Brandon, with Adventure Archaeology. Before we get started with the show, some great news. The All Metal Mode detecting metal detecting forum is up and running. Woo! So you want to go to allmetalmode.com to get signed up and get involved in some real metal detecting conversations. If you have any feedback or have any problems, Mike Hare asks that you please let him know. You can either message him or email him. Then next up, June's issue of Dirt Digest magazine is available. Go to dirtdigestmagazine.com to check out this monthly online treasure magazine. All right, on to the show. Hey, Gypsy, how are you doing?
I am doing great. How about you?
I am good. I'm good.
Things are better. Did you get out this week and go
I
or the
did.
week before? We missed last week.
Yeah, we did. I.
Doing great. How about you?
I am good. I'm good.
Things are better. Did you get out? You there?
I
Or the
did.
week before?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I.
Did I
Can you
lose
hear me,
you?
Gypsy?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, that's great.
What's going on?
I'm like, I'm listening to myself for some reason.
Do you have an echo or something?
Yeah, there was, but
I hear a little bit of an echo on your side, like it's. Huh. What's going on?
I'm like, I'm listening to myself for some reason.
Do you have an echo or something? You there?
So how was your week? Did you get out digging?
I did. Let's see. It's been crazy since last time we were on. Before our technical difficulties last week, I'd gotten out and I found my second silver with the Apex. I found a Kennedy half, a silver Kennedy half. First $50 I'd found in a long time. It's been a long time. And then I got out with some fellow diggers from kind of South Texas, a brand new club that has started, and they had stopped meeting because of COVID and just started back. And I went and spoke with some of them this week and got to go hunt in an old mansion and stuff. We found some cool stuff, found some old Ford hubcaps, and I found the coolest compact I've ever found. Ladies compact. It's huge. I mean, it is huge. It's as big as my hand, round. I think I posted some photos of it, and it's got this beautiful little scroll work on it, very ornate. And then today I got a neat little thing. I'll post some photos later on Zero Discrimination Facebook group. So I will let y'all see that. What about you? Did you get down to the river again and do some mudlarking? I'll post some photos later on Zero Discrimination. You there? I will let y'all see that. What about you? Did you get down to the river again and do some mudlarking? Hello?
Yes, I have. Actually, I've gone down to the river and done some river walking and can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, I have. Actually, I've gone down to the river and done some river walking and also found a new bottle dump on the river, so I've been digging that with a friend. That's going to actually be quite a while. It will be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to getting back there this weekend. Also,
Cool.
found a new bottle dump on the river, so I've been digging that with a friend. That's going to actually be quite a while. It will be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to getting back there this weekend.
Cool.
So I saw the compact picture you posted. That was pretty neat.
It is really cool. It's huge. It's so neat.
Hey, we're trying, Dave. We're trying for no dead air, but it is a bad duplicate coming through.
Not sure what's going on tonight.
Well, Gypsy, do you want to bring Brandon on and go back and forth, and I'll try to fix it on my end?
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and welcome our guest tonight. Tonight we have a special guest, Brandon. And Brandon has a YouTube channel called Adventure Archaeology. And I've been following him on YouTube for, I guess, about as long as he's had his YouTube channel, I think. And really excited to have him as our special guest tonight. Brandon, welcome.
Guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate y'all thinking of me tonight.
No problem. It's been a while. I think we had you on over a year ago, probably with Mike and I, but not with Amanda. So sorry for the little bit of technical difficulty we're having tonight. I'm not sure. Who knows? Maybe it's because I'm in East Texas and I'm using a landline tonight, and she's had computer problems recently, and I think she's using a different computer tonight. So hopefully we'll get it all worked out. And but Brandon, tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and how you got started metal detecting.
Well, just a quick rundown. I'm a second-generation, quote-unquote, treasure hunter. My dad started back in about 1980, swinging a Garrett metal detector, and his passion kind of ran from that into bottle digging, where he was out deer hunting and walking through a pine thicket, and he heard a pine needle make a squeak on the bottom of the ground, and he knew it was glass, but he didn't know what, and he kicked the pine straw back and found an old whiskey bottle that was quite valuable, and that kind of set him on to being a bottle digger / just a bottle enthusiast in general. And so when I was growing up, I grew up around bottles and metal detectors for the majority of my life, but in all honesty, I always just kind of thought my dad was a little bit crazy. You know, I was like, man, I don't know about all this junk lying around the house, and I was like, well, you know, it took me till I was about 20 years old or 21 until I realized that junk was pretty cool. And and I got into it pretty hardcore a little over a decade ago. And, you know, it's kind of just been a downhill run from there. It's just escalated, and it's been a blast. I've had a good time. Met a lot of good people like you, Gypsy, through the connections through YouTube and different things. And it's definitely a blast.
It is neat, all the people that you meet in this hobby, and that's what I love about, that's the one thing. Earlier we were kind of, before the show, we were talking about technical problems and technology and all that, but it's really brought a lot of us treasure hunters together, and we've been able to travel and meet up with each other and meet each other and dig together and do videos together, and it's just amazing how far we've come from years ago. But I love your story about, you know, your dad finding that whiskey bottle, and that's really neat. I know that you do both. You do metal detecting, you do dump digging, you do basically, you find some totally amazing, out-of-this-world bottles. I still have never found a Hutch bottle, a whole Hutch bottle. One of my first Hutch bottles that was almost whole that I found was when I was living in Galveston. I was metal detecting an old property that had been torn down, and I actually metal detected that metal part in the bottle and dug it up, but it wasn't all the way whole. I was really disappointed there, so it's still on my bucket list. Tell us if you don't mind, kind of how you go about finding some of those dumps. I know you don't want to give away all your secrets or anything, but we would love to know more about that and how you go about it.
No, I don't mind telling it all. I mean, because to be honest with you could tell somebody where a dump is, and it still takes a special kind of person to want to dig a 10 or 15 foot deep hole. It kind of really, it really weeds out the people that really want to find that glass versus the ones that are just enthusiasts and want to, I hate to say it, but portray or act like they're a bottle digger. But I mean, it really does take a special kind of person to do what we do. And I mean, usually the way that I get started, and this sounds pretty crazy, is I just use Google Maps, and I'll pull up a modern day aerial view of a town that may have a bottle or a bottler that I'm looking for that I would like to have. And I try to just imagine what it would have been like 100 years ago. And you can use the old aerial footage that was taken back in the 30s and 40s, which is kind of grainy at best. It's hard to see, but you can kind of tell where there were trees and businesses back in the 30s and 40s. And the bottles that I'm going after are like 1890 to 1920, so they're not super old, but they're old enough to be extremely valuable and pack a lot of history into the bottle itself, because the bottlers at that time is what was going on was the cola wars. So everybody was trying to go after the cola niche, and they, it kind of really, it hit the world with a storm, if you will. So like, for instance, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. So Birmingham, there were over 120 different bottlers at one time. And it was very, very, I guess you would say, a crowded market, but it also makes it a really fun time for people like me who like to go dig for bottles, because you never know what you're going to dig. You have 120 different kinds of bottles that you may dig, and then each one of those companies had different variants and different molds that made the bottles different even more. So, I mean, you have thousands of different types of bottles in each city that you go to. So makes it very interesting. But yeah, I look at the Google aerial maps, and what I'll usually do is I'll look online, and you can look up which way the wind is prevailing in that town. And usually they had enough foresight back then to not put a city dump on the side of the town that the wind would blow the stench or the smell into the town. So you want to start on the opposite side of the town. That's the first thing. The second thing you want to look at is which part of the land may have been unusable. And what I mean by that is they didn't want to take prime real estate and use that prime real estate for a city dump, because that made no sense. They'd usually look for a really swampy, nasty area next to a creek or a river, and they would fill it with trash, or a deep ravine is another good example. They'd fill a ravine with trash as well. So I usually get on Google Maps. I can pull up and look at where the creeks run, where the prevailing wind was, and get a general idea of where or which side of town I need to be on. And then from there, it's just hopefully finding a vacant area that dump may be in. Now, a lot of areas, there's interstates or main highways that have been built over dumps and houses now. But if you can find an area that's, the land where you can look it up, you can get on LandGlide and look up the landowner and actually ask for permission to go out there and look. So there's a lot of things that go into it, though. Another trick is always look close to old graveyards. And a lot of people are like, oh, man, there wouldn't be a dump next to a graveyard. But actually there would be. And the reason for that is because graveyards actually carried a lot of disease back then. You got to think in 1918, you had the Spanish flu going on. They didn't understand a lot about what was going on at that point. So they would usually put the graveyard on the outskirts of the town, and that graveyard carried disease. Well, guess what? The dump carried disease as well. So they would put the diseased people that would have died as well as the diseased dump in the same general area to kind of keep that on the outskirts of the town. So I usually look for the graveyard, look for the creek and the river, and be on the opposite side of the prevailing wind, and that makes a big difference whenever it comes to finding an area to dig.
Wow. That's a lot of information. Love that. Thanks for sharing that with us. I've found that I've never thought about the graveyards. A lot of the times, most of the dumps I've found have always been around rivers and creeks. Do you find several around rivers and creeks as well?
Oh, yeah. Usually, I'd say 80% of all of the dumps from the turn of the century were next to water. And like I said, that was for several reasons, one of which was the unusable land was swampy. But the other reason is those dumps were constantly on fire, and they used that creek or river as a natural fire break. So it just kind of served it. It had a dual purpose for why it would be there.
Huh. That's interesting. Love that. Huh. Amanda, I know you still there. You got some questions for him?
All silent on her end.
I don't know what happened. I know she was having some problems.
I do. So you obviously creek dig and you bottle dump.
Seems like she's lagging pretty bad.
Yeah. I didn't
Which is the
catch all
favorite
that.
that you do?
I didn't catch that. Did you?
Sorry,
Gypsy?
we didn't catch that, Amanda. Are you there? I'm still not hearing her, so
So bad. I apologize. The lag is seriously horrible. I know that you're creek digging, not creek digging, but you're creek walking as well as dump digging. So my question was, which is the favorite that you tend to like?
Actually, probably my favorite, if you'd asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said dump digging, but I've really kind of dove into the side of doing the creek walking because I'd heard so many success stories through the years, at least in my area, of people finding really good bottles. And I was like, man, I've got to get in on that. It's so much easier than digging these 10 and 15-foot holes. So the first 5, 6, 7 times that I went out, I didn't find anything in a creek. And I thought, man, this is just a bunch of baloney. I'm not going to find anything. And it took me a little while, and I had to get, I guess, what you want to call maybe creek vision or river vision and figure out that you're not looking for color as much as you are for shape when you're in the water, because you got a lot of silt and different things in the river that settle on the bottle. So when you're actually looking for a bottle, you're not looking for that aqua color or the clear color. You're looking for that shape, the roundness of it. So a lot of times you may pick up a tree limb that's the same size as a bottle, but you kind of get just a good visual for what you're looking for after a few times. So I do like creek walking more than I do digging now. And that probably shows on my YouTube channel because there's a whole lot of videos with me in the water.
Have you ever tried to use one of those? I can't remember. Wayne in the chat makes them, Nugget Brain Wayne. They're used a lot for gold prospecting in rivers, and it's like a scope that you look down. It's like a tube. You look down, and it's got a clear magnifying type glass on the bottom, and then you can see the bottom. It helps you, it kind of magnifies it. Have you ever tried to use one of those before?
I have not. Actually, me and Matt from Gone Digging actually talked about that, actually building one, just a sight glass. And, I know a lot of people use them, and I've never used one, and it's really and truthfully the only reason I haven't is I haven't made one. So, I mean, if I had one, I'd probably try it. But what I think that I'll be doing, because I just invested in a lot of gear, is I'm going to be doing a lot more diving. So I've actually got some new dive gear I'm going to try out. I got a new hookah set up, and that's going to take my adventures to the next level of actually being on the bottom in some of these deep pockets that you can't get to when you're walking with waders on. So that should be coming in the coming weeks for me, and that may take the need for that sight glass out, except for during the wintertime, and I probably won't be diving then.
Okay. Well, Wayne says you're welcome to contact him. He's done a lot of testing with those, and he might be able to send you one. He calls it a Peak AU. And then, let's see, Bill says something, use a 5-gallon bucket with a plexiglass on the bottom as well. But anyway, Wayne Nugget Braden, he makes some. The one that I have, the plexiglass is like a really thick, so it kind of magnifies it. So I really like it.
Yeah, I definitely would love to try one out. Like I said, I've never had the opportunity to build one or try one, but I could see where, especially in the swift current areas that I'm in, where you kind of got a little bit of white water at the top, where it's like a huge difference to be able to see past that into what's in those pockets.
Yeah, especially those areas, I think, would, benefit you the most in those swift areas. It would be kind of hard to use it, as you're walking through the whole river. You're going to do a lot of bending with that and looking down and trying to hold it in the water. So, but for the swift areas, I think it would be perfect, or some of those really deep areas that you might want to kind of, use it to kind of go in some of those areas, pockets and stuff, for sure.
I think the thing that I like the most about the creek walking, though, in all honesty, is that there's not really just a super learning curve to doing that. I think it's just an everyday treasure hunt that anybody can do, and a lot of people just don't think about it. I mean, if you can just find an old town and get in the creek closest to it, at some point, whether it was church baptisms at the turn of the century or the random fishermen, at some point somebody threw a bottle in that creek. And there's going to be bottles in there, and then every time it rains, it's basically a rejuvenated hunting ground. So you may walk that creek 100 times, but every time you're going to find something new after every rain, because the bottom of the river, it's constantly churning and new stuff is washing up. So you never exhaust your hunting grounds, and that's the other good thing about it.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I love about the dumps, too. It seems like some of those dumps are never ending. I mean, they just keep giving and giving. Can you tell us more about, I've seen some of those holes that you dig and how deep you go. How did that get started of you digging down super deep, and tell us about some of the finds that you found. I know you find things besides bottles. What's some of your favorite things that you found, and some of the most memorable? Maybe you have some stories to go along with them.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in all honesty, a lot of times the dumps that you wind up in are because of word of mouth. Somebody else found it, kind of like good metal detecting areas. Somebody else found it, and they invite you along, and then you've got a new spot. Well, that's kind of how some of the deeper dumps that we're in, we found out about them is secondhand information from other diggers that had gave up on them because they were too deep. The guys that were digging in the 70s and 80s are now in their 60s and 70s, and they're a little bit too old to really want to put in the effort to dig a 15-foot hole, so they'll pass the information on to the newer diggers or the younger diggers. And, I mean, I'm not exactly a spring chicken myself, but, like, my digging partner, Clayton, he's 23 years old, and, he can dig like a badger. And so that's how we wound up in these deep areas. A lot of times it's because that's what's left. These guys, and they just passed up those areas because they didn't want to put in the effort. So once we get in there and we get to digging and we start finding stuff, it's kind of like an adrenaline rush, and you find a couple good bottles and it's hard to stop. You just keep going. And some of the stuff that we do find in these areas, because they were city dumps, probably the coolest things are going to be porcelain signs. We do find a lot of porcelain signs, which are highly collectible. Most of the time they're roached pretty bad, but every now and then you'll find one that survived and it's in really good shape. One of the coolest ones that I found is actually a Vicks VapoRub door push porcelain sign. It would have been what you push the door open with, which is pretty neat. And it was pre-1912, which is really cool. It has fantastic coloring with red and blue, and it survived and looks fantastic. As a matter of fact, we have it as a display at my parents' house. My mom and dad love antiques, so I passed it on to my dad. My wife won't let me display it. But that was a really fun find. Another one was a chocolate factory, which was local to Birmingham. We actually found a solid brass chocolate factory sign, which was fantastic. That was a really cool find.
Wow.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is lots of clothes and stuff got thrown into the dumps, and so you find a lot of buttons. So we find a lot of World War I buttons, because some of the areas we're in that we're digging is 1914 to 1918-ish. So, I mean, we found a lot of World War I stuff. We even found a pistol that was from World War I this year, which was pretty neat. Heath from History Seekers was with us on that adventure, so that was fun. He got to experience that. We've found, I found false teeth and marbles and barber dimes. I mean, pretty much you name it. We find Indian head pennies. I mean, we find all of that stuff, usually by eye, not by sifting, just because of how much dirt that we're moving. A lot of people are like, man, you need to sift it. And I'm like, you don't understand. When you dig a hole the size of a car, you can't sift all of that dirt or you would be there all day.
Right. Oh, man. I can imagine. So what, besides shovels, is there any special other tools that y'all use for digging? Or have you ever used like a backhoe or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing is you've got a lot of ethics questions comes in. You know, a lot of people are like, is it ethical to use the backhoe? Is it ethical to do this or that? In all honesty, it depends on if you have the proper permissions. And as far as your general tools, before we get into the heavy equipment side, just a bottle probe, a 5 or 6 foot bottle probe is a good thing to start with. A good shovel that's not going to break, and then a scratcher is what I call it, which I know that's not a technical term, basically just like a 3-prong rake and some good gloves. If you've got all of that, you're ready to be a bottle digger, which means that you don't have $100 invested in all of your equipment. Now, ideally, if you're going to be the guy finding dumps, you'd love to have a GPR unit. But I think y'all know as well as I do, GPRs are extremely expensive. Carl Harrar, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Carl. He's actually building his own GPRs now and selling them. And they're fantastic units. I mean, and he's got them down to a price to where I guess they could probably be compared to like a GPX. I mean, GPXs are still $3,000 plus, which is ridiculous to me. I can't imagine spending that much on a machine. Right. But he's got the GPRs down to around $5,000, and they can read. I mean, ground penetrating radar can read 12, 15 foot deep, and it'll tell you exactly what's down there. So it'll expose the trash layers, but I haven't hit it big enough on YouTube yet to be able to afford one of those. But aside from that, though, yes, it kind of, I guess the way to put it is you got to look at a dump and look at the value of the dump and whether it's going to be covered up and or built on. I guess a lot of the areas we dig in, is a construction site and they're about to build a hotel on it, they're about to do this or that. And it makes a lot of sense that if you've got a limited amount of time to bring in a machine, yes, you may break some bottles or some jugs, and it may be frustrating to do that. But the 80% or 90% you don't break, you are still able to save before it's forever gone. And that's the way you got to look at it. You got to evaluate your situation. The other situation is if you hand dig a hole the size of a car, if you only pull 3 bottles out, you're not going to hand dig it probably ever again. But if you have an excavator that with just a few bucketfuls can do what would take you in a full day of work, then you can still save, like I said, 80 to 90% of the bottles without breaking them by using a machine. So, yes, we have been known to rent an excavator only where we have written permission, only in those areas. And we've got a really good area that we did that in earlier this year. We did a whole series of videos with excavator. So that was a fun time. It had a 12-foot boom on the excavator. We dug past the 12-foot mark to where we couldn't reach anymore. Had to dig down, dig a further platform, move the excavator down, and continue digging. It was 16, 18 foot deep, and we still didn't reach the bottom. So that's not something you're going to really be able to do by hand. So the machine made all the sense in the world.
Wow. I can imagine digging that deep. I mean, it would save you so much time. One of my questions, unfortunately, Amanda is having major issues, so she's working on maybe calling customer service. So I'm going to keep running on here. I wanted to ask, do you ever stop, when you're in these dumps and stuff, do you ever stop and I know you're mainly digging for bottles, but do you stop and do any sifting or anything like that occasionally?
Like I said, the sifting can be a big deal. You can find a lot of stuff with sifting. Like I said, we do find barber dimes and Indian head pennies and all that kind of fun stuff, but they're so few and far between. If you've really got a good eye for it, we find tokens too, but we don't do a ton of sifting. So, I mean, I know a lot of people, we get a lot of flack for that. Like, oh, you should sift it, but we just don't quite have the time.
Right.
It's not my full-time gig. I still have a full-time job, and I still have a wife and a daughter waiting at home when I do go do this stuff. So
exactly.
I have to be very smart whenever it comes to my time and what I want to do with that time. So as much as I hate to say it, we don't sift as much as we should. I would love to go back in the future because usually when you fill a hole back in, some of that ash layer, the good layer that has stuff in it, is kind of still at the top of the hole once it's filled in anyways, and you can sift that stuff So that's just, we could go back and sift the top layer with no problem at that point. So a return trip may be in the future, especially if we were to run out of good areas to dig or metal detect or magnet fish. So it just kind of leaves our options open for more stuff later on in the year.
Right, definitely. And I'm curious, we've got a question here in chat from Ohio Relic Hunter, Bill. He wants to know, what is the furthest you've had to pack out the bottles to the truck, and how many bottles was it?
Probably the furthest I've had to go is about 3 miles.
Wow.
And it doesn't seem very far, but sometimes the furthest you'll go will be in a creek. You'll get in a creek and just keep walking, and before you know it, you're way downstream, and then you have to walk against the current on the way back. And if I had a good, for instance, back in February, I had just a stellar day. I didn't bring a backpack. I mean, ideally, you want to have a backpack with you to load down. I didn't bring anything with me because I didn't think I was going to find anything, and I figured out pretty quick, if I don't bring my backpack, I usually find something. So I just leave the backpack at home all the time now. But in all seriousness, though, I'd probably walked about a mile, and I pulled out a whiskey jug, which was I'd say it was probably a 2-gallon whiskey jug, which already, that's one arm down. You know, you're carrying a whiskey jug with you, you've got a whole armful. And then I pulled out, 1, 2 Hutches, and 3 Crown Top bottles. And I had my waders on is the only thing that saved me, and I loaded my waders down the front bib pocket and inside of the waders with bottles and carried them out about a mile, walking upstream in water, and that was not fun. That was a lot of work.
Oh, man. I have so many questions for you. So tell me about your favorite bottle that you've ever found, and then also tell me about your favorite metal detecting find you've ever found.
I could do that for sure. I can't narrow my favorite bottle down to just one. I have 3. I have 3.
Several.
We'll go with that. We've got 3. Okay, the first one is what's called a Pratt City Indian Hutchinson bottle, and it's a rare bottle due to the slug plate that the embossing sits in. And the reason that's one of my favorite bottles isn't necessarily based upon monetary value. It is a $500 bottle. Don't get me wrong. If I were going to sell it, I know I could sell it for $500, but it's in my collection. It's not going anywhere. So I mean, it was a valuable find, but it was because I had been after one of those bottles for over 10 years. So it was one of those things, when I found it, it was just pure joy came out. You know, when you're looking for something that hard, it's a bucket list item, and you find it, it was fantastic. The 2 others were whiskey flasks. One actually came out in one of the excavator digs. We dug down. I got in by hand and was digging around and pulled out a really nice local saloon whiskey flask, which was fantastic. It was from East Alabama. And the whiskey jug that was actually in the picture of your thumbnail for this podcast is actually the same company that the whiskey flask is, which is R.E. Garner. And that was a saloon, which was fantastic to find that jug and that saloon flask.
Jug. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah,
it was. We found 3 jugs on that dig, which was fantastic. It was a blast. And then the last but not least, I actually dug 2 weeks ago. And that's because I'm actually, like I said, I'm from the Birmingham area, but growing up, I lived in Tuscaloosa County, which is home to the University of Alabama, if that puts you in kind of any reference to the general area I'm in Alabama. And I dug a Tuscaloosa Dispensary flask, which was fantastic, in an area that had long been given up on. A lot of people said, there's nothing left, everything there is broke. And I was in the general agreement for the last few years, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go check anyways. And after about 3 hours of digging, out pops this beautiful full-pint dispensary flask. And that's not something very many people get to dig, much let alone from your hometown. So that was a fantastic find. Metal detecting-wise, as crazy as it sounds, probably my favorite thing metal detecting was my first Walking Liberty $50. That was a blast, and it was mainly because we were out doing a family day. It was me, my wife, my mom, and my dad, and we were all swinging detectors. And the AT Pro rung up, and I just knew that I had a can, and it was that $50. So that was a fun find, just because everybody was there to experience it with me.
Wow. Yeah, there's nothing like that, especially with it being a family day. Now, speaking of family, your wife does some detecting and some digging with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, she loves it. Since we had our daughter back in 2016, she's had to slow down a good bit, but she was my digging partner up till 2016. And at that time was about the time that I met Clayton, which is my current digging partner for bottles. Metal detecting wise, I've kind of just been hit or miss who I go with. I haven't really just had a tried and true metal detecting partner, which is why I don't do it as much. Like I said, Heath and Scott from History Seekers live about an hour from me, so we meet up and detect. But here lately, they haven't been detecting in state. They've been all over the Southeast and multiple states to find the awesome stuff that they do. So I haven't been able to go with them on those trips. I've been invited, I just haven't been able to do it. My wife loves it. She just has, like I said, limited time because of my daughter, and she loves being a mom more than she does being a treasure hunter. So I can't blame her for that.
Well, yeah, and after the little one gets bigger, it's easier to get out more. Now, didn't y'all recently, you acquired some AT Maxes, is that correct?
Yes, we, long story short, I cut my teeth, like I said, about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe almost a decade ago, with an Ace 250. And that was what really brought me back into the metal detecting world. My dad had his original Garrett from 1980 or 1981, I forget what year it is, that he bought from Kellyco back then, which is hilarious.
Wow.
And he still had the original business card in the box with that detector, 40 years later. And he still swears by that machine. And to tell you how old school of a detector he is, with that machine, he didn't cut plugs. He took a screwdriver and would just stick it into the ground, and when he hit a coin, he knew he had one. Nowadays, you have people that flip out if you rub the dirt off of a coin. But back then, that was how they did it. They just stuck a screwdriver in the ground, and if they felt a coin, they knew they had one, and then they dig it up. But he swears by he swore by the Garrett machine. So I learned on it, moved to the Ace 250. My wife kind of took it over, and it was around the time that KG and Ringy had got their show up and going, and we were watching it on the Discovery Channel or whatever channel it was on, I forget. And my wife was like, "Man, we've got to do this. This just looks like too much fun."
Wow.
So we bought that Ace 250, and she took off with that Ace 250 and was just finding clad and nails or whatever and just having a blast. And I said, well, you know what? It is fun. And I turned on YouTube about that time and found Nugget Noggin and started watching Nugget Noggin around that time. And he was swinging an AT Pro, and I said, well, we need to get us an AT Pro. So ordered an AT Pro and used it, and that's where most of my silver finds came from, was the AT Pro. It pulled tons of silver out of the ground here in central Alabama. It was a great machine. And then against my better judgment, I will never downplay anybody. I signed with another metal detecting company that had offered me some free equipment in exchange to basically, just rep their equipment. And I tried using their equipment for around 2 years, and I just never could get the hang of it. And I just kept on wanting to go back to Garrett and wanting to go back to Garrett. And finally I said, I'm going back to Garrett. Regardless, that's who I want to be with. And so I talked with Steve Moore, and he's like, hey, we'll send you an AT Max to try. And so he sent me the AT Max, and I fell in love with it at Florida Hunt 6 earlier this year. I actually went to Florida and got to do that group hunt, which was a blast. The AT Max just did phenomenal. I mean, I loved every bit of it. It was so much better than what I came from that I was ecstatic to have it. And then my wife's like, hey, well, if you like it, let me try it. And so she tried it, and then next thing you know, we bought another AT Max. And so now we're both swinging AT Maxes, and we love them. And hopefully, in the future, she's excited about the Ace Apex because of how much lighter a machine it is.
Yeah.
And she's very, very excited because of how light it is. And she's like, that's the only thing I didn't like about the Max was it was kind of heavy. And she was like, I'm never in the water anyways. The Apex makes perfect sense for me. I said, yeah. So we'll get you one as soon as it comes out. So we're excited about that machine as well.
Yeah, definitely. That Apex is going to be perfect for one of the things that I love so much about it. When I got it, you know how you always get the manual when you get a new detector. Well, I basically am using the prototype, so there was no manual or anything. And I just slapped that thing together and charged it up, turned it on, and it's just like, it's so easy. That's what I love about all of Garrett's products is they're just so easy to turn on, and you can turn them on literally and go, but it's so easy to scroll through the different features on that thing and set it up the way you want to set it up, and just basically turn on and go. So I'm loving it so far.
The user-friendliness of Garrett has always been a big appeal to me. And, like, I was out on the beach this past weekend, as a matter of fact. I went to Panama City, Florida, and broke out the AT Max while I was on the beach and did some beach detecting. And, I mean, it pretty much didn't find anything super. I found a bunch of clad, but had a really good time. And we were there at sunset, and, the sun went down, and I was like, oh, well, let me flip on the backlight. I've never had to do that because I'm not detecting at night.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I didn't have the instruction manual. And 2 buttons later, I had the backlight on, and I was like, man, this makes a huge difference. So I was like, I'm not flying blind anymore.
It does. It really does. That backlight on the Max and the Apex are just, they're, especially for me, I used to do a lot more night hunting than I do now, but there's just times that, I just want to, especially in the summer in Texas, it gets so hot. So sometimes you want to either go early in the morning or late in the evening and detect on into the dark, depending on where you're at, of course. And that backlight is just, it's a lifesaver. That's for sure. But I'm loving that Apex so far, and I still, I love my Max. In fact, I got out today and found a little thing that I'll be posting later that I think I mentioned earlier that I can't wait. Tomorrow I'm going to an old ghost town / there was a big, the town became a ghost town because the Yankees had come and burned the town down. And so last time I was there, with the Max, I got 3 Civil War bullets and a, Volunteer Corps button, Eagle button. And I'm really excited to get out there and see what this Apex can do out there because there's so much iron, and see if I can work through the iron. So I'm excited about that. Going to be a long, long day tomorrow. Leaving at 1:30 a.m. So I'm going to get about 2 hours sleep tonight.
I was going to say, it's past your bedtime already.
It really is. So I haven't seen Amanda drop any comments in the chat yet, but there are a few other questions that we usually ask. Let me check here at my notes. One of the questions, let's see, we like to ask. Well, let me ask this. Do you attend, now this is, of course, probably prior to COVID. Right now there's been so many shows and stuff that canceled. Is there any, like, glass shows or bottle shows that you like to go to, or relic shows that you attend?
I do. I have attended several. I did the Civil War show in Georgia last year. Was it the year before? I can't remember, which would just kind of really blew my mind. I've never been a big Civil War hunter. The reason for that is Alabama is just a little bit funny. Alabama had a lot of Civil War activity, but, kind of the areas that were all hit, were burned, were like the University of Alabama, and it's, you can't really go out there and just detect next to the university. The other big battle was in Bridgeport, Alabama. And Bridgeport's actually, all the land that the battle was on there, which was a massive battle, is actually owned by TVA, which is Tennessee Valley Authority. They're the kind of company that if you were to detect on their land, you were going to jail. No ifs, ands, or buts. Right. It's just going to happen. There's no getting permission there. And the other battle front that would be, I guess, within reasonable distance to me is Selma, Alabama. And that is actually a big no-no as well. So those general areas are not areas that I can get into, and the small skirmishes that happen on the outskirts of all of the big battles that are now protected sites, usually one person was shot. or one person may have died, or it wasn't something where there was bullets flying everywhere. It was a single shot or two. So you're not going to find lots of artillery fragments and all that kind of stuff. And I guess a good way to put that is if the guys from History Seekers aren't able to find it here in the state and they're having to go out of the state to find it, that it's probably not here. It's not just me. So those guys are really good at what they do over there, and I've learned a lot from them on that front. Now, but yeah, so the Civil War show is something that I did. I enjoyed it. It was fun to go to. I know the big one's coming up for American Digger here in just a few weeks. I may attend it. Bottle show wise, there's quite a few through the Southeast that I like to attend. I'd love to go to the big one in Charleston. It probably will not happen this year, but there's a big one coming up that's in Mobile, Alabama here in July. If you follow my YouTube channel in my community section, usually what I try to do is post the flyer for the bottle shows in my community section that I think I'm going to attend, just in case you ever wanted to meet me for some reason, and just talk with me. That way, I'll be there. But, that's fun. The other big show I always attend is the Jackson, Mississippi Bottle Show. It's actually one of the biggest in the Southeast, and it's always fun because you have tons of diggers from all over the Southeast that attend, and then you have the occasional sign guys, so there's tons of porcelain signs there as well. So you just kind of get a really well-rounded glimpse into everything, and occasionally you will have the fossil hunters show up, and they'll set up all kinds of shark teeth and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's just a fun thing to attend and meet people at.
I love it. So let me ask you this. Is there a special item? This could be both if you want to go with that. Maybe a bucket list find or a white whale that you just really would like to find, metal detecting wise and, dump digging wise, bottle digging wise. Is there like something that you really want to find maybe this year or next year?
There's two metal detecting finds that I really want to find. One of which is a Riel. I want to find a Riel real bad. The state, of Alabama is an older state in the south tip, where the ports were, but up in the north, it's reasonably new. Like Birmingham, Alabama was incorporated in like 1880 something. So it's just not quite old enough to have the Spanish coins like they do on the East Coast. But I would love to find a Riel. The second thing on that would be I want to find a cannonball. It doesn't matter the size. I just want a cannonball just to say that I found one. I think that would be a blast. I have a feeling I'll probably find one of those magnet fishing before I do metal detecting, but you just never know. But it would be a blast to find. I would love to find one just to say that I did. That's the two that are really on my metal detecting list. On the bottle list, on that front, I really, really want to find a Coke Hutchinson bottle just because they're, that's the white whale of any bottle digger that's a soda collector.
Right.
So,
oh, man.
But those are my three, and hopefully I'll find them one day. I put the boots on the ground enough that eventually I'm bound to run across one. It just may be a few years. It's just, being out there and putting yourself out there to find it.
Right. That's so true. And you've been doing a little bit of magnet fishing. Is there anything special that you found magnet fishing?
Funny stuff. I won't even talk about that on the show, but probably the coolest thing that I've ever found magnet fishing would be actually in this past week's video for me. I actually found a 1970s XL motorcycle gas tank. And that's not a big deal to a lot of people, but this one's pretty neat, and I love vintage motorcycles. So I actually worked on and messed with motorcycles most of my life, and I've always liked old Honda motorcycles. So finding that gas tank was pretty cool. I'm excited about taking it, cleaning it up, and, just putting it on the shelf to look at. That was a neat find. Magnet fishing is something pretty new to me, so I'm just starting to learn about it and really getting into it a little bit at a time. And I'm not used to going after iron objects. That's something that normally I try to avoid. But it's definitely fun.
Oh man, yeah, I'm the same way. I do love magnet fishing, but I'm, the iron stuff. Is usually what I get. So, I've found a few cool knives magnet fishing, but no guns or anything like that. But it's still fun. Definitely I guess it's fun also for the whole family if you take your wife and kiddo. But
well, usually your magnet fishing crowd's a different type, anyways. I think that a lot of people see YouTube and they see what happens and they don't realize the amount of work and effort it goes into finding stuff. And that's just kind of across the board for whether you're a bottle digger or a metal detectorist or, a magnet fisher even. You see the highlights. You see the really cool stuff. You never see the dips, the low points, and all that kind of stuff. And magnet fishing, I was like, I watched the magnet fishing video. I was like, man, I'm going to pull a motorcycle out of the water. I'm just waiting. So that gas tank was about as close as I got.
That's funny. Yeah, I had somebody comment on one of my river videos the other day, and they're like, what are you down there fishing with your, I don't even think they knew what a pinpointer was, fishing around for your metal objects. Why don't you just use a magnet? And I'm sitting there like, because
pick up gold.
Gold and silver isn't magnetic. Oh, brother, I know you get some crazy comments. So tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel. Tell everyone where they can reach you or find you on YouTube and on social media, and then tell us about your recent thing that just happened.
Yeah. If you want to find me on YouTube, it's as simple as typing in Adventure Archaeology or probably even Antique Bottles. If you type in Antique Bottles, I'm probably going to pop up, in all honesty. So if you can't remember the name, just remember Antique Bottles, throw it in there, and all my videos will pop up. If you want to find me on Facebook, it's Adventure Archaeology and Southern Diggers, and Instagram, Adventure_Archaeology. And usually kind of the way that I work it is I release a lot of videos on Facebook and YouTube. Every Friday, I release a main hunt video on YouTube, which is going to be either a metal detecting trip, bottle digging trip, magnet fishing, whatever it is. And then usually on Mondays or Tuesdays, I'll throw in a random either adventure, exploring, looking at an abandoned building, just whatever the case may be. It may be scouting, it may be probing, just whatever I'm doing at random that may not be a full-blown, 10, 15, 20-minute video. It's going to be 7, 8, 10 minutes long. And I think that secondary video is important to show people, to make them realize that when we go out, we don't always find something every time. I don't want to give unrealistic expectations of becoming a bottle digger and finding great stuff every time you go out.
Right.
So, I want this to be as honest as possible. But, yeah, YouTube has been an interesting trip for me. Like I said, I watched Nugget Noggin back in 2012, 2014, whenever it was, and thought, this kid has got something going for him. He's got a lot of stuff going on. At the time, I didn't realize that, you could get paid from YouTube. I just thought, this is cool. He's getting, I forget how many thousands of subs he had. He's got this many people watching him. This is fantastic. Great for him. And then the more I watched him, the more I thought, man, I could do that. And I just never had the opportunity. At the time, I was a machinist, and I was working this crazy schedule, and I just didn't have time to go out and film videos. And I was like, man, if I ever get time, I would love to go out and film some videos. So right before I left my old job and went to my new job that I'm currently at, I filmed about 3 videos in 2017, and they were, terrible videos with my cell phone upright, and they're not even long ways, just atrocious to watch. No editing at all. I was trying to pause while I was recording and restart it, which is horrible when you're digging a hole. And I posted those 3 videos, and I kind of just lost interest and didn't think anything about it. And I checked my statistics about 6 months later, and I looked. I was like, oh, man, I got like 400 or 500 subs, and I didn't even mean to. And I was like, man, and there's thousands of views on this one video. And kind of what triggered it for me was a big accident. We were joking. We dug this really deep hole at a bottle dump, and we nicknamed the hole the Oak Island hole. We were calling it 10X, just being hilarious because we hit the bottom and it flooded. Out of nowhere, the water started pouring into the bottom of the hole while we were digging, and I was like, oh, we're digging in the Oak Island hole. It's 10X. And, my buddy that I was digging with was like, well, we're finding more than they're finding on Oak Island. And we just went back and forth, and I put that in the title of the video, Bottle Digging in the Oak Island Hole, which is what we named it. Call it clickbait or whatever you want to. I didn't intend it to be that way, but I didn't even know how YouTube worked, so I didn't even know what clickbait was. And all of a sudden, that video just took off like a rocket whenever Oak Island's new season come out, because it just blended in with the trending. And I was like, man, that was easy. If I can hit a 20,000 view video in my first video, I can do this all the time. And I started putting videos out, and it didn't work that way. It was just that title that worked for me. And I worked really hard over the next couple of years. Like I said, I lost interest in 2017, come back in spring of 2018, and decided that I was going to try to release a video once a week. And as of yesterday, we passed 15,000 subscribers, which was a huge milestone for me. I would have never thought that there'd be 15,000 people on this planet that would want to watch a crazy Alabama boy go dig big holes and look for bottles. But apparently there is.
Well, that is awesome how your channel is exploding, and you just reached, what are you at now, right over 15,000?
Yeah, it was crazy. I had a magnet fishing video take off from last Friday, and it's trying to go viral. It's not viral. It's only got like 25,000 views on it right now, but it's doing about 1,000 views an hour. And while it's rolling, it's rolling right now. And as it's rolling over the last 2 days, I've pulled like 400 new subscribers in the last 48 hours. So I'm sitting right at 15,000. Yeah, 15,200 subscribers. My goal is 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And I know that's just a number and it doesn't matter, but I think it's important to put those goals in front of you and chase them. I mean, that's how you reach them.
Heck yeah. Well, did you find anything good? Or, I'm going to go watch the video, but is there, throw a little...
No, there wasn't anything good. And that was the crazy part. I mean, like I said, that motorcycle tank was in there, and that was about it. But there was, I looked, like I said, at the magnet fishing videos that were doing really well on YouTube. And I mean, it was people pulling up bicycles and lawnmowers, and, there was nothing just substantial to it. It was just about taking people on the journey and getting them outside while they're stuck inside because of COVID.
Right.
And I think that's really the big part of it, is that people were tired of sitting on the couch and watching the news. So they're looking for something different to watch. And lo and behold, the crazy guy in Alabama that's magnet fishing put out a video, and a lot of people wanted to watch it.
That is so cool. Well, congratulations, Brandon. I'm so happy for you, and I hope you just continue to grow and explode. And I saw you post something. Well, maybe I shouldn't bring that up yet. I'll leave that.
No, you can bring it up.
Okay. I saw you post something on social media about possible TV show.
Yeah, we've had a long-running contact with a couple of TV producers that contacted me, and there's nothing set in stone. And anybody that's in the YouTube world has pretty much probably been contacted by a YouTube producer at one point in time. And most of the time, you run into a dead end. And I talked with Brandon Neese for Dr. Tone's 24K, if y'all haven't watched him. And he was always a channel that I love to watch. Uh-huh. And after I got into the world, we got to where we talk a good bit about YouTube and analytics and all that kind of stuff. And him and Jocelyn, actually, I talked to both of them about TV shows because I knew they had both been contacted multiple times. They both said, it's a long shot. There's no guarantee. And I understood that. And so when we went in, the first 3 or 4 were a bust. We didn't hear anything back. We did video interviews. You do what's called a Skype interview, and then they decide whether or not you're the talent that they're looking for, quote unquote talent. Right. And after multiple Skype interviews and failures, I finally had a producer contact me, and he's like, "Hey, look, I've worked with the guys that do Deadliest Catch on Discovery Channel, and I did this show and this show." And I thought, okay, this guy's talking big, but there's probably not a whole lot to it. And he said, well, I want to take some of your old YouTube videos and build what's called a sizzle trailer. And that sizzle trailer is essentially what we pitch to the networks. He said, our goal is to pitch it to Netflix, History Channel, Discovery, all that kind of stuff. This has been about a year ago. And I thought, okay, well, that'll be cool. I said, but here's the deal. If you're going to use my old footage, I was like, I would love to see the sizzle trailer whenever it was done. And he said, okay. Right. So he built this really cool trailer. And the show wouldn't be just about, me and adventure archaeology. There would be another guy out of New Orleans, who I won't mention his name, who's digging down there on Algiers Point. And so it would be two of us, and basically the show would ping pong between my guys and me digging up here, and his guys and him digging down there, and we just have a little friendly competition of who was finding what. The cool part about it was that it was all about the history of the bottles and not necessarily about the value. And that's always kind of the ticket is, being the guys, you don't want to be the guys that are kind of getting made fun of like the Alaskan bush people. You always got to make sure you're going to be portrayed in a nice manner, because the last thing you want to do is ruin your reputation. And, after meeting with this guy, seeing the trailer, it looked fantastic. I thought, man, we got this in the bag. He was excited. A year later, we heard nothing. I was like, well, guess not. Well, he contacted us back. He's like, hey, I had to sign a ROI contract saying that, hey, I won't say anything. I won't do this or that. The ROI ran out. And I thought, okay, well, the TV show's done. Well, I had two more shows contact me this year. And he came back and said, hey, look, the company I was working for, it tanked. He said, that's why you didn't hear anything. He's like, now we got another company, and they built another trailer. And I was able to watch that earlier this week. And it really kind of rekindled the fire with me and got my hopes up that, it may move forward. There again, it's still a long shot, but the trailer that they made looked fantastic. Will be sent to History and Discovery. And if they're in the market for a show like that, then, if they get it, then from there we have to re-sign contracts and all that kind of stuff. But either way, it's still fun to do. It's still fun to learn and see how a show goes about and how they go through so much work in the front half to get it going. But it's exciting times for sure.
Well, that's exciting. Just remember us little people. You make it to the big screen and invite me down for one hunt or something.
Absolutely. I don't think it's going to be anything like that, though. I think that's the big thing is it would just be a down-home show, you know what I mean? And that's the thing is I was like, look, I don't want any embellishment. I don't want anything like that. I was like, if we do it, I want it to be legit. I want to show what we do, I want to show the ups and downs and all of it. And so, like I said, I think that's what I put in the post. I can't remember if I did or not. We finally found a producer that seems like a good fit. Well, that's because of his vision of what the show needs to be. His vision is along the same lines as mine. So that made me feel really good to deal with somebody that thinks like that.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want it to be anything that it's not, and that you're not, and no fake stuff. That would be the worst. So I hope that works out for you, and keep us posted on that. And before we close this down, I got two more little questions for you. Number one, if you could detect or dig anywhere in the world with no restrictions, where might that be?
I've had some time to kind of think about that question because I've heard people talk about it. I've heard the White House lawn. I've heard a bunch of different really good ones. And in all honesty, I think the place that I would love to go would be like to one of the Spanish fleet ships that have sunk. I'd love to detect actually on the bottom of the ocean at a sunken ship site. And to me, when I think about treasure hunting, that's just the epitome of a treasure hunter. And it wouldn't matter which one, as long as there was gold or silver on it. That would be where I would want to go.
Definitely. So, are you scuba certified or anything like that, Doug?
I am not scuba certified. That is something that I need to get done. Like I said, I do have a hookah set up for diving that doesn't require that certification unless I were to dive like in a spring or something like that has that's park oriented. So I can kind of get away with it in the creeks and rivers around here where I'm at. But becoming certified is definitely something that's on my 2020 list to get taken care of, just to kind of further what I can do in the future. It's definitely a high priority for me to get that done.
All right. Well, we've got one more question. Well, we've already got a guess on the last in chat. I don't know if you saw it. We like to ask as one of our final questions, if you could be any superhero and dress up like this hero while you're out metal detecting and acquire the powers of that hero, what would that be?
I'd have to be Superman. I mean, he's got everything right. He can fly. He can. He's super strong. That means I get super speed. That means I can dig a hole in no time.
Bill from Ohio said you would have to be. He's guessing Flash because you could dig faster.
Yeah, he's right, but I guess I could. If you're Superman, you could just take the bucket and from a tractor and just dip it out.
Well, you'd have that X-ray vision, so.
Oh, there you go. I'd know if there was a dump there. You're right.
Yep. So that's perfect. Well, tell everyone where they can find you on social media and all of those places, if you don't mind.
Yep. Like I said earlier, Adventure Archaeology on YouTube, or just type in antique bottles and look for the thumbnail that's got bright yellow writing on it. That's usually me. If you do Facebook, Adventure Archaeology, and Southern Diggers, Instagram is adventure_archaeology.
Awesome. Can they find you on any of the other, Twitter or any of that, or mainly those?
I've got a Twitter and a Reddit, but in all honesty, I don't really mess with them, so I don't direct people there. It's more of me to watch other people than for me to actually post stuff on there.
Well, and Amanda says she hopes to have you back on soon. She sorry that she was having difficulty. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that fixed soon, and then have you back again, and hopefully before you're too rich and famous and you forget all about us.
I don't think that'll happen, but tell her understand, technology, we can't live with it. We can't live without it. It's one of those scenarios, but I'm glad that I was able to come on tonight.
Well, we were so glad to have you, and hope to talk to you soon. And thank you all for joining us tonight, and hope you all have some happy digging this week if you get out and dig. And good night, all. All right. I don't know if she took us off air yet. I'm still going to talk. Anyway, thanks again, Brandon, and I will talk to you soon.